Hello, my name is Lisa Honig Buksbaum, and I'm the CEO and founder of Soaring Words. Welcome to tonight's Soaring Words, Soaring into Strength, Positive Health workshop. And tonight it's called Soaring into Resilience. I'm so excited that you're joining me. And before we jump into all the information and the positive psychology exercises and the science, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about myself. 20 years ago, my life changed significantly when 3 experiences with death and illness happened in my family in a 10-month period. My only sibling and younger brother, Gary, died suddenly of an asthma-induced heart attack. I got the phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning and 3 hours later had to tell my parents the terrible news. Then 5 weeks after this, my father had a second bout of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He had the worst kind and the worst stage, and he needed a bone marrow transplant to stay alive. The head of oncology and the doctors told me and my mother that my father's survival was unlikely. He was going to die. But when I looked into my daddy's eyes, I saw that he wanted to fight, that he wanted to live. And I said to him, I know you can beat this. And you know when someone's kind of yesing you or kind of not telling you the truth, but I meant that with all my heart. And he knew that authenticity, that high quality connection. And in fact, he did live cancer-free for 19 years. 10 months after Gary died, my oldest son, Jonathan, became catastrophically ill with rheumatic fever. He was heavily medicated. He was twitching and drooling. He had minor heart damage and neurological damage. And for 4 very long months, this was our reality. The doctor told my husband and me that we should go be by the sea, be by the ocean, rent a cottage, get out of Manhattan, all the hustle and bustle. So we moved out of the city to a little cottage right on the ocean, and that's where we lived for 4 months. Each night I had to sleep in my son's bed because he would get terrible cramps and he would scream out in pain, and it was just easier to sleep in the bed next to him to comfort his tired limbs and assure him that he was okay and help him go back to sleep. Needless to say, it was a terrible time in our lives. I was exhausted. We had a young child as well. And, it was a scary, narrow time. During the height of his illness, I would walk along the beach from 5 to 6 in the morning as the sun was coming up. It was so beautiful, and the ocean is my special favorite place. I would sing and pray and cry because the rest of the time, as Jonathan's caregiver and his mommy, I had to be strong for him and put all my attention to being positive, being hopeful. But during this time, it was my opportunity to let it all out and just be. Suddenly, on one of those morning walks, I heard the name Soaring Words, and I had a calling, a feeling from above. I saw the rest of my life in front of me, and I saw millions of children and families that were grappling with illness and setback, and I knew why I was born. And I decided that I would, in fact, devote the rest of my life to helping other children and families. I'm so happy to say that today my son is fully recovered, and just a few months ago, my daughter-in-law, Evelyn, and Jonathan gave birth to a baby girl, Charlotte. We call her Charlie in honor of my dad, Charlie. Over the past 19 years, I have seen thousands of children and families who have really pulled on their resilience, who have really reached into their core. And I've been inspired by these individual resilient exemplars. And we've embraced more than 500,000 children and families with Soaring Words, expressive art projects and videos, hospital programs, school programs, and programs for leading companies throughout North America and all around the world. What I've learned from meeting thousands of children and families and talking to people about these serious medical challenges is that some of the most resilient people I've ever met are people who are grappling with very serious setbacks. So that's why I was so excited to have the opportunity to share this workshop with you, because I want to share the latest positive psychology scientific findings with you, culled from thousands of these encounters with heroic children, family members, adults who are grappling with setbacks, and also healthcare professionals who are on the front lines. Learning these strategies and these tools, hearing these stories, is going to fortify you to tap into your resilience and strength. I want you to consider this your very own resilience masterclass. What is resilience? How to strengthen your resilience? What are the common pitfalls that actually make people more vulnerable to setbacks and suffering? And whatever happens in your life, the positive times and the negative and challenging times, you'll have a deep repository of resilience to fortify you and your loved ones. So first, let's talk about what resiliency isn't. It's not about being macho and non-emotional or using blunt force to tough it out and get through difficult challenges. Resilience is about being open and vulnerable to our deepest feelings. It's not about stuffing these feelings or blocking these feelings, because when we do that, the body has a way of letting them come up and it hits us even harder. So if we are open and vulnerable to acknowledging our deepest feelings, then we can make a choice. We can choose to give our all to taking the next right step forward. And we all have goals in our personal and professional lives, and the best way to move forward is to take away the stumbling blocks that prevent us from reaching these goals. I like the Japanese proverb that really depicts resiliency in action. It says, fall down 7 times, get up 8. This philosophy acknowledges that setbacks are a natural part of life. And when we can recognize that and accept that, it's much easier to move forward with a more positive outlook. Now I want to review the 3 roadblocks to resilience, and then we'll spend the rest of the workshop focusing on specific strategies to build your resilience. The first enemy of resilience is going through life on automatic pilot. When we're on automatic pilot, we tend to zone out and not pay attention. Maybe we're multitasking, maybe we're listening, but we're not really listening. I hope you are listening to this webinar. But when we're on automatic pilot, it leads us to feel less energized and less creative because we're kind of coasting. We're simply going through the motions rather than actively engaging in the present moment. Multitasking is the modern day synonym for autopilot. We see this all the time on the subway, when we used to be able to take the subway, walking down the street, even when people are out for dinner for special occasions or celebrations. Remember when we used to go to restaurants and actually be able to eat there? People are multitasking, which means they're not really present. Our first workbook exercise is going to be how to increase your presence in the present. I want you to think of 3 activities where you would like to be more fully present in the next 3 months. What are the specific benefits of being more present in these situations? And how will you derive more satisfaction and connection to the activity, to yourself, and to others? Now, if you already clicked on the link in the chat, we have a beautiful Soaring into Resilience workbook. But if you didn't click on the link, and if you don't have a printer and you don't want to open that right now, just grab a pen and a piece of paper and you can just write the answers to these questions here. And then at your leisure later after the webinar, you can spend more time journaling about these workbook activities. Normally the workshops I give are 90 minutes or 2 hours or an hour. So this is a little quicker, but that's okay because I'm a New Yorker, so I do things very quickly. But so just jot down the 3 activities where you would like to be a little more present. I'm going to give you a moment to do that. Okay, the second enemy of resilience that I'd like to examine is called habitual thinking, specifically negative habitual thinking. Imagine a dirt road where trucks drive over and over the road, creating deep grooves or indentations in the dirt or the mud. When we have negative ideas, they tend to get entrenched in our minds, just like those deep grooves in the road. the neural pathways of our brain get entrenched with this habitual negative thinking. And we literally get stuck in the mud. We get stuck in the mud. Well, there's a way to stop this habitual road to negativity. And it's as simple as learning your ABCs. In fact, it's called the ABC model. Let's unpack how this model works. Something happens and boom, you start to react. You know what it means when you get triggered or you react? You sort of flood, you're not really thinking calmly, rationally. Maybe your face gets a little redder. Maybe your voice raises a little higher, louder, higher. You start to react. That's called a trigger or an activating event. The belief, the A is the activating event, and the belief is closely linked to the activation. So for example, your annoying neighbor starts to brag about her grandson's latest accomplishments, and you're already getting frustrated. So when you talk to this person, you can never get a word in edgewise, and they're always bragging. Or when your boss starts talking about priorities just 5 minutes before you're about to sign off and get ready to have dinner with your family. Seriously? So your negative beliefs, the B in the ABC model, automatically kick in and you start telling the story. But what if you could take a momentary pause to become aware of the beliefs just for a moment? And here's the great part. Start to separate the beliefs from the activating event, which serves to deactivate the impact of the negative beliefs. It just takes a moment. So here's some examples of some activating events. Somebody does something negative or annoying. You're running late for an important appointment. You're lost and the GPS in your car suddenly stops working. A person's complaining loudly about some trivial matter, or you get a rude email from someone, or someone didn't follow up on an important project, or a person was dishonest to you and you found out later. I'm sure that you'll have no problem adding many examples to this list of activating events that can trigger negative emotions for you. So let's review a hypothetical example using the ABC model to analyze each of the steps in the model. So here's a situation. A person at the cash register takes 20 minutes to help a customer while you wait. And the first thing you say is, why do I always pick the wrong line in the grocery store? Now here's the belief. He's wasting my time. I have no patience for this nonsense. The emotional consequences are that you feel tremendous frustration and your body starts to react as you experience a sense of rage or your heart starts racing. One of my mentors, Rabbi Rachel Cowan, used to teach that long lines in supermarkets or long waits in traffic jams are wonderful opportunities to practice breathing, quick mindfulness meditation with your eyes open, of course, or simply to spend a few moments in gratitude. And we have these opportunities all day, every day. Maybe the printer's taking a couple of extra seconds to turn on. Just to use that as an opportunity to check in with yourself and ground yourself. So after the webinar, I'd like you to turn to page 3 in your Soaring into Resilience workbook. And you're going to think of a recent example from your life where there was an activating event, the fireworks started to go off, where you got triggered and you went to a negative mindset or a negative place. So you're going to just fill in activating event, conversation with someone's name, beliefs. Why are they always so confrontational when I speak to them? And then the consequences. I lost my cool. I said something that wasn't very nice. Whatever it is, we're just looking for a little snippet. And just remember that no one else is going to see your Soaring into Resilience workbook. So like everything in life, the more honest you are with yourself in picking things that really trip you up, the more helpful it will be for you to remove these obstacles going forward from your thinking style. On page 4, I've included a pretty comprehensive chart of the underlying beliefs and the emotional consequences linked to the beliefs. So you can see what feels familiar to you when you get triggered or in different situations. And using the ABC model over time, you'll be able to use more of your resilience to just take that brief pause for a moment and change your beliefs from negative to more hopeful and positive. But right now, we're going to move right along. The third enemy of resilience is giving up, specifically giving up before you even try. Sometimes it's easier to say, I didn't really try, because then you can believe that if you had actually tried, you could have persevered through a difficult goal. But taking the shortcut of giving up before you start, it always leaves you stuck between the nowhere land of what could have been and the state of what should have been. So that's why it's the third enemy of resilience. Best-selling author and researcher Brené Brown talks about shame. She defines it as an intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of acceptance and belonging. We feel like the little child wearing the dunce cap. But when we take a moment to become aware of these underlying negative beliefs, it gives them less power, and then we can replace them with more positive affirmations or statements. So in a few moments, we're going to look more specifically at our underlying negative beliefs and how we can change them to become more resilient. So Angela Duckworth is a friend and mentor. She's a MacArthur Genius Award winner. And she was one of my instructors at the University of Pennsylvania Positive Psychology program. And she's famous for resilience, and her work is called grit. That's the term that she coined. So we're going to talk about grit. But before we do that, I want you to think about the dark places. And when you go to that workbook exercise, I want you to shine the light on your shame and humiliation. After the webinar, I want you to reflect about a time in your life where you tended to avoid the challenge before you even tried. And what was the underlying shameful thought that you're ready to banish right now so you can take a shot at accomplishing this goal? We're going to move on from this exercise on page 5 of your workbook, and you can do it after the webinar is over. So here's a picture of me and Angela in New York City. This was the night that before Angela was launching her book on grit. And Angela is considered the foremost expert in the world on grit, which is a synonym for resilience. And she defines grit as perseverance and passion for long-term goals that are really hard. So whether you're fighting to regain your health or your peace of mind, your well-being, whether you're ruminating on some things that are causing you anxiety, or it's the health of a loved one, or you've come back from a setback, or you're anticipating a setback, throughout our lives, there's many opportunities to experience more resilience for long-term goals. So we're going to watch a short video where Angela, in her own words, talks about grit. Today it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Angela Duckworth, who is a paragon of positive psychology and the author of Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance to Achieve Really Hard Goals. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Congratulations on your book. It's amazing. There it is. Talk about grit. And wanted to see if you could explain what grit is and how that would be relevant for hospitalized kids and families that are grappling with difficult situations.
The way I define grit is as a combination of passion and perseverance for really challenging long-term goals.
Sometimes when people hear the word grit, they think of failure or that kind of feeling. Can you explain how this really has nothing to do with that?
Well, I think overcoming failure, or let's more generally say setbacks, right? Because failure we usually attribute the cost to ourselves, but there could be adversity that it's not our fault, but it happens to us, and that's still an obstacle to overcome. I think that is part of grit, actually, but it's not all of grit. And the reason is because if you're resilient in the face of failure or setbacks, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be passionate about something. I mean, to be gritty is to really care about something so deeply, so enduringly, that it gives meaning to all of your effort.
So now turn to page 6 in your workbook, or after the workshop, you're going to write about a time when you were resilient and you persevered through a goal that was difficult. What did you do to persevere? How did you accomplish this? When you think about your resilience in this situation, how does it make you feel right now? And how can you parlay this success of being resilient in a difficult, challenging time into other endeavors? Now we're going to listen to Dr. Duckworth talking about how to keep a positive mindset.
Talk a little bit about positive mindset.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for how complicated the world is, and many people have pointed out to me, oh, here are all the things, Dr. Duckworth, that you can't control. You can't control that a disease happened to you. You can't control necessarily what's going to happen after the diagnosis. There's so many things that are out of your control. Well, one thing that's true about gritty people who generally, I think, are adaptive and thriving in life, is that while they acknowledge that there are many things beyond their control, they choose to focus on what they can control. And by that I mean, for example, if you are a parent with a sick child, it's true that there are many things that you can do nothing about, but you can ask yourself every day, what can I do, towards whatever, and you're trying to get your kid better care or to make them, exactly.
So you're talking about in the book this concept of deliberate practice, which we'll get to in a minute. One of the things you said, which I really loved, and I think it's important in the context of illness, is that parents have to let their children know that they're really, really loved and that they should be very demanding. And I think it's easy for parents when their children are in the hospital, or for kids when you're in the hospital, to be a little whiny or like, I don't want to do that, or to baby them. And that doesn't really help the child, and it doesn't help the parents, because when they walk 2 more steps in physical therapy, it means that they're getting stronger. And that also ties into the positive mindset that instead of focusing on that they still can't walk or play sports, they walked 2 more steps today in physical therapy than they did yesterday. And it wasn't easy, it was actually very difficult. So all those things kind of coming together.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's certainly love when you support your children and you tell them that you respect them and that there's nothing you wouldn't do for them. But it's equally love when you tell them, I need you to get up again. I mean, I'm going to push you a little bit. If you didn't love your kid, you wouldn't do that, because that's hard, right? And so the challenge, I think, is to know how much to push, right? So you can't push too hard, right? I mean, you can't ask them to do things that are just impossible for them to do. I think the idea is to take them from wherever is extremely comfortable for them and nudge them a bit into that range of productive discomfort, but not so far that you're really expecting them, that there's nothing they can do but fail. That's not right.
Precision athletes and world-class musicians practice their skills and devote themselves to harnessing their passion for over 10,000 hours to perfect their craft. This is called deliberate practice. And for decades, researchers around the world have tried to understand the extraordinary abilities of people who achieve superior performance. Recent research suggests that peak performance is to a large extent influenced by practice and experience, specifically this notion of deliberate practice. K. Anders Ericsson, a Swedish psychologist, defines deliberate practice as activities that have been specifically designed to improve the current level of performance. So instead of doing mindless repetitions, deliberate practice requires meaningful, specific goals, focus, and feedback from an expert or coach, parent, or someone who has more skill in that area. This is the way that top performers continually step out of their comfort zones in order to acquire skills they aim to possess. So whether it's a nationally or globally ranked chess master, or an amazing athlete, like one of the most amazing athletes of all time. It's said that Michael Jordan always got to practice before anyone else on his team, and he always stayed longer than anyone else on his team. These athletes and these musicians, they make it look so easy. But remember that deliberate practice takes time and effort. I'm giving you many workbook exercises with this workshop so that you'll have a chance to flex your resilience muscles and get stronger and get a sense of what embodied resilience feels like for you. So on page 7, you're invited to follow your passion and increase your resilience. I'd like you to think about something where you devote tremendous time and energy, but it's something that makes your heart soar. It's not like doing laundry because I have to, or putting food on the table because I'm feeding my family. For some people, it could be spending time preparing meals to fuel your family, but the passion part of that, you want to connect to the passion part of that. And when I make these meals, it's a way that I show how much I love my family and how much I care for them. For others, it could be caring for a loved one, being a caregiver. Or for others, it could be learning as much as possible about your favorite topic. What is it about this activity that fuels your passion? And what is it about the challenge that makes you feel invested and accomplished in this endeavor? There's no right or wrong answers, but if you follow your passion and put deliberate practice and attention toward it, you will start to feel that grit and that resilience and that pride about working towards a goal that is difficult. So now let's focus. We've already explored the obstacles to resilience. Now I want to take a few moments and focus on the insights and pathways to resilience. And for this, I'm thinking about the work of Dr. Carol Dweck of Stanford University, who's the leading scientific expert on growth mindset and fixed mindset. Her work provides important contributions to understanding the way that our thoughts shape our actions and our emotions. There's a profound bias built into each one of our brains. You either tilt toward focusing on what I can't change, more of a fixed mindset, or you tilt toward thinking about what I can change, more of a growth mindset. When you use your growth mindset, you tend to be more optimistic and you start thinking about examples of other difficult goals or challenges that you overcame. And that fuels you to be more hopeful and to move forward with passion and energy and excitement. With a growth mindset orientation, you believe that you will be able to persevere once more. People with more of a fixed mindset keep hearing that negative voice inside of their heads telling them they can't do it. The negative tapes keep playing like a broken record again and again, so they get trapped in this downward spiral like a hamster on a treadmill. So in the cartoon on my screen, the fellow in the tunnel above, he has a growth mindset. He's going to just keep persevering till he gets to the treasure. Where the fellow on the bottom has more of a fixed mindset, and he's giving up just minutes before achieving his goal. Let's hear what Dr. Duckworth talks about the benefits of having a growth mindset.
Which brings me to my next question, which is talking about this notion of growth mindset. When I was a little girl, my favorite book was The Little Engine That Could.
Yeah.
I think I can. And I've seen in my research that with Soaring Words kids, that when they believe that they can do something, working towards that goal makes it more possible.
Yeah, there's so many quotes on this, but they're all true. So Henry Ford is often quoted as saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And that gets to this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, certainly on the I can't part, right? If you think you can, at least you have a chance, right? But we've seen this over and over again with kids who are in the hospital or out of the hospital, right? I mean, for grown-ups too, it's almost universal, where people kind of count themselves out and they make that come true. They're sort of like, see, things didn't work out for me, but it's partly because they made that happen. I think to have a growth mindset is to really focus again on what you can change and to hold on to a bit of hope, right? That there's something, maybe not everything, maybe not most things. There's something that you could do to make your situation different. if you talk to Carol Dweck about where her research really comes from, she was going through college when some of the earliest experiments were being done by Marty Seligman and Steve Mayer, trying to figure out the science of hope and the science of hopelessness. And she knew about these studies, but she was asking the question, well, where does hope come from? I mean, it's true that we can now understand it a little better, that to lose hope means to lose a sense of control. And that was the seminal finding. It's kind of obvious to us now in 2016, but 50 years ago, it wasn't obvious. Carol wanted to know, where does this bias come from to sort of tilt towards what I can't change or tilt towards what I can? And I think her profound insight is that we're all walking around the world with these little private theories in our head, and the sort of the way it is, the way the world works and the way human nature works. And for somebody with what Carol would call growth mindset, your theory is that intelligence and ability itself is invaluable. Like, people at their core are changeable. And if you have a fixed mindset, it's the opposite belief, which is that you believe deep down that you are who you are. I'll never be good at basketball, or, I'm just not a math person. I'm an introvert, and there's nothing, that would ever change that. And I think that science is on Carol's side. So not only is a growth mindset more adaptive in the sense that things generally work out better for you when you keep trying, but it's also true from a neuroscience point of view that, in fact, the brain is plastic, and it's plastic all throughout life.
Which is why it's so important that when someone gets flattened by an illness or diagnosis, they see that there's a lot of room in there to work hard, to have the deliberate practice, to have that positive mindset, that has a positive cascading impact on their physical and emotional well-being.
And I don't think either of us are here to say that, you can cure anything with a positive. That's not the message. And I know you well enough to know that we agree entirely on that. I think that, you're exactly right that, if you approach things with, well, what can I do? What could I do with this day to make it as good of a day as I can make it? I mean, that's all it really is. And I think that kind of light switch of deciding that you're going to do that versus kind of capitulating to, this more passive, like you're just kind of being tossed around on the sea of circumstance, I think it really dramatically does. It's like you said, it's a cascade.
So after the webinar, you'll have the opportunity to complete the next activity on page 8 in your Soaring into Resilience workbook. You'll close your eyes and you'll think of a time where you used your growth mindset to overcome a challenge. Actually, we can do that right now because we have a few more minutes. So just close your eyes, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in through your nose, keep your mouth closed. Breathe out and breathe in. I want you to think about a time when you overcame a challenge and you had a positive growth mindset. What unique strengths did you use to persevere? How did this make you feel when you pushed through that challenge to succeed? What are you most proud of and why? Take a deep breath, breathe out, and when you're ready, open your eyes. And just jot down a note of what that experience was. And after the webinar, you have the time and the space to journal about that more. And then what you're going to do is you're going to look back in your past to this opportunity where you were a growth mindset exemplar, where you did something using that growth mindset foundational tool to help you navigate through a difficult time. And then you'll be able to pull upon that and draw upon that when you're facing current challenges in your life. So if you turn to page 11 in your workbook, or just look at the next slide on the screen, the thing that makes Soaring Words really unique is that we always inspire millions of ill children or their family members or adults who are grappling with serious challenges, and even today, healthcare professionals and people on the front lines. When we invite them to pay it forward by doing an expressive arts project or a fun and meaningful activity to donate to an ill child in a hospital in your community or hospitals all around the world. So on this slide, you can see, and it's also in the workbook link, which if everyone sends an email to Lisa, Lisa, at soaringwords.org, soaringwords.org, just say resiliency workbook, Soaring into Resilience workbook. We'll send you that link to the workbook. So we would like for you, we're inviting you to think about a superhero. It could be your a famous superhero from mythology or the movies, or from classical literature, or from the comic books, or you could invent your own soaring superhero and use this page on the next page in your workbook to fill the whole screen. Think of this as your blank canvas. Or you could go to soaringwords.org. Under activities, soaring superheroes, the instructions will be there, the borders will be there. And we want you to create a soaring superhero and email it to heal, H-E-A-L, at soaringwords.org, or email it to me. And you can know that today, when you tap more into your resilience and your creativity, you've also expanded your heart and feeling more positive by doing something kind and meaningful to inspire children in the hospital all around the world. So I see we have a whole bunch of questions and comments, so I'd like to address them. The first is from Susan, saying that we were talking about productive discomfort and, overcoming obstacles, and she is caring for a husband with Alzheimer's. And she says, I cannot be demanding and must learn to be patient and learn new skills of communication and role reversal. My MBA does not help with this at all. Well, that's true. I have an MBA, and while it was very helpful for marketing and business related things, the master's in positive psychology and the school of life has been much more helpful in these kind of situations. So first of all, I just want to celebrate this act of self-compassion and self-care that you've taken by taking the time to be on this workshop with us today. I've given hundreds of workshops. The workshop that I lead is called Caring for Yourself as a Caregiver. And actually, we're going to be offering that workshop as one of the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology, the MAPP Global Alumni offerings. So if you or anyone else on the call want to send me an email to my personal email, my team will definitely make sure that we send you a link and an invitation when we're leading that workshop on caring for yourself as a caregiver. But I still think that you can be demanding to yourself, and this is what I mean. I think that it's so easy to get really depleted when you're a caregiver. And in fact, the data and the science is very strong that caregivers tend to not go to doctor appointments and take care of themselves, or even give themselves any time to be self-loving, maybe take a hot bath, take a warm shower, go for a little walk around the block, or just have a cup of tea when you're not being a caregiver 24/7. And I know what you're thinking, that's impossible. You don't know my situation. But if you can just remember to put yourself into the equation and then pick something that gives you energy, that energizes you, what Angela was talking about, that feeds your passion, and then just be a little perseverant with that. Maybe you set a very attainable goal. For 10 minutes of the day, I'm going to watch some funny videos, or I'm going to call one friend for 10 minutes every day, or I'm going to reach out to some friends and ask them, at this time, could you call me? Because I'll never get around to calling you. That's what I mean by being very deliberate, and to be demanding, to acknowledge that caring for yourself is important, because when you care for yourself, then you'll be much more able to be more resilient, to be more grounded, to be less triggered when you're caring for your husband. So I hope that was helpful. If anyone else has any questions or comments, please type them into the chat bar right now. Someone else sent me a personal private email, text rather, saying that I liked seeing all the things that resiliency isn't. We have a lot of macho images about multitasking all the time and, not showing our feelings. And you gave me permission to not hold on to those faulty beliefs. So I'm glad that was helpful. Anyone else have any questions or comments? All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. We have a link for the post-webinar survey that's just been added to the chat. And we're also going to, Jessica's going to repost the link to the workbook right now. And if everyone could just click on the Survey Monkey link right there, it literally just takes a couple of moments to fill that out, and that's very helpful. Soaring Words really believes in the power of the science, the empirical data, and we are collecting this data anonymously to show the impact that these workshops and webinars have on moving people's resilience and how they're helpful to allowing you to flourish even in the midst of challenging times. Soaring Words is the power to heal. And thank you all for taking the time to join me today. And thank you for taking a minute to complete the Survey Monkey survey.